Hold on to your seats, because what I'm about to break down today could seriously impact how millions of Americans manage their money going into 2026. And trust me, this is not just another routine update. April 2026 is shaping up to be one of the most important turning points we've seen in years when it comes to Social Security payments, stimulus checks, and the entire way government money is distributed. If you are among the more than 70 million people who rely on Social Security benefits, or if you're even remotely eligible for the newest round of stimulus payments, then what you're about to hear could make a real difference in your financial planning. And here's the thing that makes this update so critical. These changes are not just about how much money you get, but when you get it, how you get it, and in some cases whether delays could happen if you're not prepared. Now, imagine waking up expecting your payment on the usual date, only to realize it either came earlier than expected or is delayed because of a scheduling shift you didn't know about. That's exactly the kind of confusion that's already starting to happen, and that's why we're diving deep into every single detail today. Because hidden inside these changes are opportunities to actually get your money faster, but also risks that could push your payment back by weeks if you miss a simple step. And yes, there is a deadline that many people still have no idea about, and missing it could cost you both time and stress. Let's start with the Social Security payment schedule, because this affects the largest group of people. Normally, most beneficiaries are used to a predictable system where payments are tied to birth dates and follow a consistent monthly rhythm. But January 2026 is not following the usual playbook, and the reason comes down to something that might seem small at first glance but has a massive ripple effect: calendar alignment. When holidays and weekends land on key payment dates, everything shifts, and that's exactly what's happening here. Because January 1st falls on a holiday, the system has to adjust. That means if your birthday falls between the 1st and the 10th of any month, your January payment doesn't come in January at all. Instead, it arrives on December 31st, 2025. Yes, that's right, you're getting paid before the new year even officially begins. For some people, this feels like a bonus, almost like getting extra money early, but in reality, it's simply a shift forward. And if you're not careful, that early payment could throw off your budgeting for January, especially if you accidentally treat it as extra income instead of your regular monthly benefit. Then, we move to those with birthdays between the 11th and the 20th. Their payments are scheduled for January 8th, which might seem normal on the surface, but again, it's slightly adjusted due to the calendar, and for those born between the 21st and the 31st, the payment lands on January 15th. So already, you can see how the system is staggered differently this time around, and if you're not paying attention, you might think something went wrong with your deposit when in reality, it's just part of the new schedule. Now let's talk about SSI recipients, because this is where things get even more interesting. Supplemental Security income payments are typically sent out on the 1st of the month, but since January 1st is New Year's Day, those payments are being pushed forward to December 31st, 2025. That means SSI beneficiaries will also receive their January funds before the year even begins. And again, while that might feel like a financial boost, it's actually just an early disbursement. If you're not aware of this, you could end up stretching your money too thin in January because you already received it at the end of December. And this is exactly why understanding timing is so important. It's not just about receiving money, it's about knowing when it arrives so you can plan accordingly. Because even a difference of a few days can affect rent payments, bill deadlines, and everyday expenses. And for millions of people living on fixed incomes, timing is everything. Now, just when you think you've wrapped your head around Social Security changes, we move into the stimulus payments. And this is where things take a completely different turn. The latest round of stimulus checks, part of the Winter Economic Relief Package, is not following the same system we've seen in the past. Instead, the government is introducing a new distribution model that breaks payments into waves. And this wave system is based primarily on how you filed your taxes and what kind of banking information is on file. If you've set up direct deposit with the IRS using your 2025 tax return, you're in the first wave. And that's the group everyone wants to be in, because those payments start going out on January 4th, 2026. But here's where things get really interesting, and this is something most people completely overlook. Some banks, especially certain credit unions and online institutions, have agreements that allow them to release funds earlier than the official payment date. In some cases, that means you could see your money up to 5 days sooner than someone using a traditional bank. Think about that for a second. While most people are waiting until January 4th, you could potentially see that money hit your account before the New Year excitement even fades. But, and this is a big but, it doesn't happen automatically for everyone. There are specific conditions, account settings, and banking relationships that determine whether you qualify for early release. And if you don't take the right steps, you might miss out on that advantage entirely. Now, for those who are not using direct deposit and are instead waiting for paper checks, the process looks very different this time around. In previous stimulus rollouts, payments were often distributed based on income levels or other criteria. But for 2026, the system is shifting to a geographic distribution model. That means checks are being mailed out based on zip codes, starting from the East Coast and gradually moving west. The first batch of checks begins mailing on January 11th, starting with New England states and then moving across the country. So, depending on where you live, your wait time could vary significantly. Someone on the East Coast might receive their check much earlier than someone on the West Coast, even if they have identical financial situations. And this is a major shift from how things were handled before. But here's where things get critical. If you've moved since your last tax filing and haven't updated your address, you could run into serious delays. There is a specific form that needs to be submitted to ensure your payment is sent to the correct address, and the deadline for that form is January 15th. Missing that deadline could delay your payment by up to 8 weeks. 8 weeks is not a small delay, especially when people are counting on that money for essential expenses. And then we get into the question everyone is asking. How much money are we actually talking about? Unlike previous stimulus payments that had a more fixed structure, the 2026 payments are using a variable scale. That means the amount you receive depends not only on your income, but also on cost of living adjustments in your specific area. So, two people earning similar incomes might receive different amounts depending on where they live. The base payment starts at $1,400, but in some cases, it can go as high as $2,000. That variation is designed to reflect regional economic differences, but it also adds another layer of complexity. People are comparing payments and wondering why their neighbor received more, and the answer often comes down to location-based adjustments. For those receiving both Social Security and stimulus payments, there's another factor to consider. The government has implemented what's called a double-dip protection system. Now that might sound complicated, but the idea is actually straightforward. They want to prevent system overloads and processing errors, so they're spacing out different types of payments. That means if you're eligible for both, you might not receive them at the same time. Instead, they could be staggered, which can affect how you plan your finances for that month. Another important change involves income thresholds. These thresholds determine who qualifies for stimulus payments, and for 2026, they've been adjusted upward to reflect inflation. That means more people may qualify than initially expected. If you previously thought you were above the cutoff, it's worth taking another look because the new limits could include you. And then there's the technology side of all this, which is something that hasn't received nearly enough attention. The government is now using advanced systems, including artificial intelligence, to optimize payment distribution. This means deposits are being scheduled in a way that prevents system overloads, which is good for efficiency but also means your payment might arrive at a different time of day than you're used to. Some people are seeing deposits early in the morning, others in the afternoon, and some even later in the day. At the end of the day, all of these changes come down to one thing: being informed. Because the more you understand about how the system is evolving, the better you can prepare, avoid delays, and even take advantage of opportunities to get your money faster. And as we move deeper into 2026, these systems are only going to become more advanced, more structured, and in some ways, more complex. So if there's one takeaway from everything we've discussed, it's this. Don't assume things are working the same way they always have. Because right now, they're not. And the people who stay ahead of these changes are the ones who avoid surprises, avoid delays, and make the most of every dollar that comes their way.